Let's bring in Princeton University professor and MS Now political analyst Eddie Glaude, and Maya Rupert is back with us. We want to note she's the author of The Real Ones, How to Disrupt the Hidden Ways Racism Makes Us Less Authentic. So welcome back, Maya. Hey to you, Eddie. And I'll start with you because the former president said one of the reasons he believes he was successful in 2008 was because he was a young candidate. How does the party balance the constant debate of youth versus experience as they try to retake power in Washington?
First of all, it's great to see you, Alex. I think the main way you navigate that division is by talking about the issues, addressing the issues that actually confront the various constituencies that inform and shape the Democratic Party. If you speak to the specificity of the lives and circumstances, the problems and challenges that young folk face, they will get excited. But if you just simply fight on the old battleground where the old issues from a different time animate not only the candidate, but the agenda, then you're not going to excite anyone. I think we need to be very careful in how we talk about personalities and how we talk about actual policies. And I think President Obama is right that you age out at a certain point, but also I think we need to talk about the substance of the agenda as well.
So, Maya, Maryland Governor Wes Moore was certainly one of the candidates that Democratic circles were eyeing big time for 2028, but he has just said he is not running. He also got a message for his party. Let's take a listen to what he said.
You know, the Democrats have got to stop being the party of no and slow and start being the party of yes and now. That everything cannot be a 10-year study. Everything cannot be a 15-year analysis. If I'm telling you that, you know what, I feel like housing prices are just going out of control, I don't want you to tell me, so let me figure out how we can do an analysis, a 10-year analysis about how we can build more housing. No, what I need you to do is build more housing now.
Democrats are the party of no and slow. Is he right on that?
I think, honestly, he's tapping into something that is very real and that voters have been communicating in a number of different ways. I think that what we have to look at, and when we think about the sort of the younger electorate that we have, they have just watched Donald Trump really just run roughshod over what we have always talked about as being rules that you just couldn't get around. Over and over again, we saw during the Biden presidency, him saying, you know, I want to do something about this, but, you know, we don't want to get sued. We can't go too far. We can't move too fast. And then you saw Trump do the exact opposite. And so I think what we're going to see is an electorate that says, I want you to talk about the issues that matter to me, but I want you to talk about them with the urgency that meets the moment. If I am living in an affordability crisis, I think the governor is exactly right. No one wants to hear, here's how we can address that in 10 years when we just watched a president shutter agencies, fire people. Now, he did it illegally, but the impact of what he did, we're dealing with it. So again, I'm not saying be that reckless, but I am saying operate with that kind of urgency. I do think that that's what voters are asking for. And I think that we have candidates in the Democratic Party who are ready to come with that energy, but they can't get their wrist slapped being told, no, that's not how we do things.
Yeah. Gotta find the right balance, though, because to your point, I mean, so much of the Trump administration is done illegally, and then they have to stop, and then we go back and forth into courts and waste time in the courts. But, Eddie, another thing that's top of mind for Democrats heading into November is the president's push to, quote, there will be voter ID for the midterm elections, whether approved by Congress or not. I mean, that's actually speaking to Maya's point right there. How does the party navigate that? Can Trump go over states which run our elections?
Well, I think the Democratic Party has to be prepared for anything. Donald Trump has proven over and over again, and it's not just Donald Trump, it's the folk around him, the folk underneath him. They've proven over and over again that they're willing to run roughshod over democratic processes. And so I think there needs to be a war room. I think in that war room, they need to be prepared for voter suppression in all forms, the ways in which they're going to count the votes, how he's going to try to deploy. Maybe they might deploy ICE, as Steve Bannon has suggested. Any and everything that they can imagine, they need to prepare for. Because I think, given the lay of the land, Alex, they know that they cannot win the election in a straight-up battle. So we have to be prepared. The Democrats in particular have to be prepared for Donald Trump and Republicans to cheat. And we need to be explicit in describing it just as that. They are preparing to steal the election. And we need to understand that for what it is and for what it means for our democracy.
May I ask you, Eddie, quickly before we go, President Obama responded for the first time to that racist video of him and his wife posted on President Trump's account. Let's listen.
There's this sort of clown show that's happening in social media and on television. And what is true is that there doesn't seem to be any shame about this among people who used to feel like you had to have some sort of decorum and a sense of propriety and respect for the office, right? So that's been lost.
So he never mentioned Trump by name. Do you think that was intentional?
Yes, I do. And, there's an elegance in the response. But, as I watched that entire interview, Alex, I'll say this, and I know I'm going to get in trouble. It felt like a time that's long gone. That the politics, that the period, that the moment that we're in, how can I put it? It's almost like a Victorian ethos in the moment of the 1970s. They just don't mix in some ways. I think.
But is it wistful for you? It's got to be wistful. It's wistful for you, right? Thinking, if only.
No, I'm not nostalgic at all. I'm not nostalgic for that time at all. We're in the midst of a 5-alarm fire. And we can't long for what was. We're going to have to address what we're facing now, and we need to do so as aggressively as possible. Yeah. We can't fall back on decorum. We need to call these people out for what they're doing and for who they are.